24 hours ago, you decided to trust us and come join us. Thank you. And thank you for coming back. Anyone have anything to start off with?
No, we're excited about day 2, especially this opening session. Looking forward to getting that. We've just got a couple little housekeeping type of things here at the beginning, and then we'll get right to that.
Yeah. So let me first mention that the videos have been posted on YouTube. So go check them out. They're under AutoEnter Live. And then we'll make sure to post day 2 videos at the end of today. And when I went to go look at it, I was just impressed at how many videos are up there. Like, that's a lot of content for one day. So check it out. Lots to watch. Another thing is Capsule. We forgot to mention at the end of the day yesterday, but it was really exciting to see the ones that came in. In case it's not obvious, there are a bunch of different prompts there. So these are the 4 categories we have. We've got shoutouts, memory lane, clearly Claris, and AutoEnter Live, which we just added today. So for shoutouts, we really just want to hear what your thoughts are about the community. At the end of yesterday, we saw the little word cloud of all the shoutouts, but we thought that there's probably a few more that didn't get captured there. So it'd be a great place to do some of that. For memory lane, we've, with the 4 of us spending time together, we've spent quite a bit of time talking about when we met, how we met, when we've worked together. So this seems like a good chance to talk about your origin story. And then everyone's going to talk about the lobby bar at the lazy river, because everyone's got a preference. And then talk about the past DEF CONs and Claris Engages. What did you get out of those? And then for Clearly Claris, just some high-level stuff about the platform itself. And I mean, we had to ask a question about the while function because it seemed like a near miss to not have included it. And the infamous tab control or slide control. Message me and DM me and I'm happy to share my thoughts on it. And then for AutoEnter Live, these are the ones we added today. What did you learn at AutoEnter Live, and what was your favorite part of AutoEnter Live? I know that this has been really fun for us. We feel like you all are having a great time. I know that the comments have been really positive and wonderful, but seeing it in video format, again, for Capsule, it's 60 seconds or less, a quick little video, and give a little shout out or give us a little more about yourself. Swag. We have swag, and lots of people have been buying them. The link is in the reception, so please go check it out. We didn't show these last time, so we wanted to show them quickly, these are the 2 designs we came up with. We were proud to design these and have them created, and we're more excited that Prodigy Promos will be creating them for us. All right.
A couple other reminders. There are several opportunities today for more networking and going to the expo and stopping by vendor booths. So hopefully you'll do that. The vendors that we've got, it's a great lineup, and then they've got a lot of good things to show, and they're there in the booths to talk to you. So please don't be shy. Just go on by and chat with people. And then the speed networking, if you didn't find it yesterday, it's under people, I guess, here over on the left. And then there's a place at the top where you can go join in for speed networking. We had fun with those poll questions yesterday, and that was fun. It seemed like a good way to end the day. So we're going to do the same thing today. We thought of a few more poll questions, and we'll post those here at some point during this opening session, or maybe just afterwards. And then at the closing session today, we'll go through the responses to those. Okay. Any other old business before we move on to new business?
We're good.
I think everyone is ready to get us off of stage because we know why everyone is here.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to this a lot. So we're going to sit back and let you guys take it from here.
Sounds good. So the fun starts here. In talking with Todd yesterday, we one of the themes that came back at us was do more with less, right? And that's exactly what this demo is going to be all about. We want to use every single product in the portfolio, in the Claris portfolio, and see how quickly we can put things together. So that's what we will do now, and we'll do it live, right? So this can go horribly wrong, but we're trusting that it won't. The scenario that we're working with, the database, the FileMaker database that you see on screen, is an event management. So that's what we're doing, right? We're tracking our events, we are tracking the attendee sessions, and we have some staff. What we don't have is feedback. So we want to be able to track some feedback and capture that from the user. So we'll put that together. One of the things that we want to do as well is when somebody gives us some feedback about the cost of the event, we'll want to send out a text message, or we have phone numbers here in the database, and we have a setting on our staff record here to say alert for any cost feedback that comes in. So we'll use that.
Hey, Wim, I want to interrupt you for a second. It
Mhm.
seems like someone's jumped in our backstage. Maybe we can bring them on stage. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Hey, check it out. We got Robert Holsey joining us.
Woohoo!
Hey, Robert.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Of
Very
Thanks for
welcome.
coming, Robert.
course.
Help us if we get stuck here.
Absolutely. All right. So we have our existing FileMaker database. That's fine. So the first thing we'll do is we'll need to put something on the web that people can post their feedback to. And that's why we are going to use Studio. Here's my Studio. And we're going to go here. So this is the preview version of Claris Studio. So this is where we will create a new form.
So while this is happening, just one of the themes of this demo and really of this event is the upcoming ability to do more with less, right? So now we're able to use the platform to do things that otherwise would have taken us out into some other technology. It's not what we're saying, like, you should feel like you need to build everything inside of the Claris platform, because that's just not, there's going to be cases where you're not going to be able to meet that. But in terms of like a form, there's lots of solutions out there that you'd have to use today to be able to pull this off. And now what we get is the ability to do this right within the Claris platform. So we don't have to go out and pick another technology. We can just use it instead.
Yep. So the flow that we are going to use is the basic one that you get with Studio. It's basically just a 2-pager. The first page is going to ask for the feedback. And then when you submit the feedback, you'll get a thank you page. So let's get this right. We will leave most of the fields there on, but we'll make them mandatory. So the first name, last name, email address. We'll make sure that we capture all of those, the comments as well. We'll update this because one of the things that we want people to do is leave their comments in their native language, and then we'll work with that to have that translated.
And so again, like if you could choose another forms platform that might get you some of these, some direction down or some distance down this road. But if you're going to go and build this, say using Next.js or some other front end framework, building forms is actually pretty challenging in any front end JavaScript framework. So custom publishing, you could certainly do it, and you could do all this stuff, but the time it would take to build this would be much greater than what we're demonstrating here. And then this ability to work with languages and do translations, that would be, again, something else that you'd have to reach out and grab some other service to do. And that we're going to see how we can do that right here with the Claris platform as it exists really today, at least in the developer preview.
Yep. So one of the things that we added additionally to what the standard fields were on that feedback form is we added a subject, and we gave it 3 options: cost, speakers, and sessions. And because if it's a comment about cost, we want to make sure that we notify Bob and Martha that they need to pay attention to that. We will also give the users the option by checking a checkbox to have an email notification back sent to them with a confirmation of the feedback that they've just submitted. So we'll do that. And that'll be just one option. That'll be a yes. That's pretty much it. So we have first name, last name, email address, whatever the topic is of their comments, and then the comments that they want to leave. And if they toggle yes, they'll get an email back to them with the feedback that they have sent to us. That's pretty much it. The form is done. The other page in the form is basically just a confirmation or a thank you. We can say feedback. We can delete the rest. And clean this up a little. That's about it. So we have a 2-page workflow. What Studio has done in the back is created a table for us where all the data will go. We'll hook that up to Claris Pro in a sec, but we can share that here so that people can start filling in that form. If I go to another browser and do just that, there I have my form. I'll make this about cost, and why not? And because I was born in Belgium, I'll write this in Dutch. And yes, I do want an email confirmation sent back to me. Submit, and that's done. And clean this up. Oh, actually, we can go look at the data. So the data has been received by submitting that form in the other browser. So that is there. We have first name, last name, email address, and all the rest of the good stuff. All right. So we have the form, and now we have a form. And remember, this is part of that backend infrastructure that you have. This can many people can do this at the same time, right? So this can be used at scale without having to worry about the performance of your FileMaker server.
There's no server, FileMaker server here. There's no provisioning a server. There's no creating a new file. There's no creating a new table. There's just simply designing the form.
Absolutely. So back in our FileMaker solution, we now have to hook it up to Studio. And the way that we do that is by adding a table occurrence to a Claris Studio data source. It's going to be the last one that we created. We'll call it Studio. So most of this stuff is going to be exactly like working in FileMaker. So this is our data. Actually, if I get out of here, and we'll see that data show up. Actually, let me go back. Sorry, let me go back and do my database. One of the things that we want to do with this data is we will leave most of that data in Studio, but we will want to augment or enrich that data a little bit on the FileMaker side, because the users may leave comments, and like I've just done in Dutch, we want to have those translated. There's some other things that we may want to track here in our own feedback table on the FileMaker side. So let's create a relationship between the two. And of course, we'll have to find some way. I'll name this first. So I don't have to do it later. And I'll make this an auto creates one here. Now, of course, I have to make a relationship on something. The one thing that Studio doesn't give us, as you can see here in the fields that it gives back to us, is a unique identifier. But we can solve that fairly quickly. If I go to my table here, my table is right there at the top. So these are the fields, and you can sort of tell if you ever worked with ESS that this is not a native FileMaker table, right? It's a Studio table, so it gets cursive a little bit. One of the things you can do is you can add your own fields to that. And just like with ESS, these are going to be, I'll just call this record ID because that's what it's going to be. These are going to be calculation fields. So these don't show up on the Studio side, but they will show up on your FileMaker side. So I'll just make this get record ID. Go. Now I can use that as my relationship. If I go in here, I can relate the record ID on the Studio side to the equivalent field on the FileMaker side and toggle on auto allow creation.
And so that's going to make it easy for you to make sure that every record that comes into Studio is going to get a corresponding record in your feedback table.
Absolutely. And that's the next thing that we will do, because one of the things that we'll need to make sure that happens is that we process these incoming records from Studio. So we'll go to the feedback section here, add a script. We'll call that process Studio records. And for that, we'll have to make sure that we are on the right context. Actually, do we have an AL? No, we don't. Well, we'll create one. And we won't worry about these things being pretty for now. And Just drag and drop all the fields on there. And you note that even though the records from the studio don't have an identifier on the FileMaker side, they will have that record ID identifier that we can use as a primary key. Well, back to our scripts. And we can now select our studio's layout. We will show all records. One of the ways that you can make sure that the studio data is present in FileMaker is to do a refresh. We'll do a refresh window, flush everything that we can so that everything updates nicely. We go to the first records loop. Go to every single record that we have.
Don't forget that.
Yep, absolutely.
Turn that off. Turn that off to on, rather. How many times have you done that?
Many times.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So because we have the relationship back to our feedback table, the native FileMaker table, we can check whether we already have a record and then not bother processing that record.
So I'm really curious to see how you check this. This is one of those things that everybody has their favorite way of checking. Is there a relationship on the other side?
I just check for empty on the primary key.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an easy way to do that.
Yeah.
So if we detect that there is no matching related record, we'll just create one. And because we have an AutoEnter set up on the relationship, we can just do a set field and use that one to set a record there on the related records. And let's move over email. And we'll grab that from here. And we can move over the comments as well.
Now, one way that you might have designed this was to use the email as a sort of unique identifier of the person giving feedback, and that you could have used that for a key. The problem is that means a person can only give one feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you had to have some kind of unique ID in order to pull that off. It's interesting that the record ID that you put in there had a very high number. I'm curious. I want to ask Robert why that is.
So I asked that again. I was following the chat here and the masters at work that everyone's admiring. Did you ask it again, Todd?
Yeah. So I noticed that Wim did a calc on the table in Studio to get a record ID, and he just used get record ID, and the number is 4736. Which is, just I'm sure it's the state of whatever it is, but just curious as to if there was any reason why that number is very high. I would have expected it to be 1 maybe, but we're not dealing with the FileMaker. I mean, we're dealing with this cloud storage, which is a little different. So any color to add to that?
My guess is that it's because it's not just the records in this particular form that you've created. It's all the ones on your instance. Right. But I will say, better exposing ways for you to hook these records that are created in the studio side to Claris Pro, so that you don't have to go through the steps you just did, is something that we're looking at. So we'll continue to make this more seamless. But that's my guess as to why you're getting the record ID there. But we can validate. Good stuff.
Yep. So at this point, every time we have an incoming, and we would find a way to trigger that script that I just wrote to run on a schedule or something like that, so that we get the records automatically as they are submitted on the Studio side or flow from Studio back into FileMaker. So the next thing that we want to do is the things that we set out to do. We need to detect what the language is on the comment that came in, and then get it translated if it's not in English. We want to make sure that we can send that email confirmation that we gave the users the option to toggle on. So how do we do that? And of course, all of these APIs are things we can do from inside FileMaker, right? Both of our favorite script step is insert from URL with all of the curl native things. But if we want to move quickly and we want to use solved problems, then that's one of the things that Claris Connect can offer. So let's create a new flow. And the flow, the Claris Connect flow will start from inside FileMaker, right? That will be looping through our records. When we find a new comment, we need to send it off to Connect to get it processed. So the trigger, because every Connect flow starts with a trigger, is going to be something that happens from inside a script in FileMaker. So that's why we have the script trigger in Connect, and we set that up. All right, we'll set up a new account, point it to our server, use my highly secure password. And what did I name that file actually? Today's date. Oops, did I move it? There we go. 0720. All right. That's really as simple as it is to make sure that Connect is connected to our FileMaker server, and that happens through the data API. So we'll move that over. The next thing that Connect gives us is all the useful information to make sure that we can communicate from inside FileMaker back to Connect. So this is the URL that we'll need, and we'll go over to FileMaker. And I've created a new blank script here, send to Connect. So the first thing is set variable. The URL is going to be this one. What's the other stuff that it tells us? It tells us the curl options that we'll need to use, so we can do that.
That's a really nice touch on that dialog, having that just right there.
It is, absolutely. And we'll change that to a non-global variable and just call it JSON. There we go. It also gives us some instruction as to what should be in the JSON that we're going to send, right? So there's a JSON object here with a key name action and the value script. So we'll have to remember to do that. The other thing, of course, that we will do from inside FileMaker is we'll need to create a payload. We need to send it the data that it needs to act on. So we'll create this payload here. And this is where we'll get into the JSON functions here. So set elements, and we'll do multiple. We'll start with an empty one because we have nothing here yet. So the things that we need to send is the email address, because we need to know what email address to use if we need to send an email, and that's going to be a JSON string.
Semicolons on the left. Oh my gosh.
Yes. We may keep the number of attendees in because it may go down when they see me doing this.
I know why you do it. I just don't like it. It's easier to comment out the line is the reason why some people choose to do the semicolons on the left. I don't know. It hurts my eyeballs.
Mine too.
Yeah.
I'm a semicolon on the right guy.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you're on your own for this one, Wim.
Yep.
Above.
I'll move to the other room.
Wait, can we kick him out now? Is that possible? No, we need him to finish this because I don't actually know what he's going to do next.
So these are some of the pieces of information that we're sending over from FileMaker to Connect, right? So the email address, if we need to send an email, the yes, no, or the checkbox that determines whether we're going to send the email, then the comments, because that's what the feedback is, the subject. Remember, that could be cost, session, speakers, that kind of thing. And we also need to send it the phone numbers, right? Because if it is about cost, we'll have to make sure that we know where to send that. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use a variable that doesn't exist yet, and we'll call it phones, and that's going to be a JSON array. All right.
So what's with that $sign squirrely brackets in there?
Yeah, that one is because Studio gave us a field name that FileMaker didn't like.
Right.
So when that happens, FileMaker will automatically make it safe. All right. And we got one more thing that we want to add. That's the record ID. Because when we're done translating and doing all the stuff on Connect, we want Connect to be able to update the record on the FileMaker side. And the way that the data API works is if you need to update a record, you have to tell it what record ID of that record to use to update. That's going to be the record, not of the Studio from the table, but the one from from the FileMaker side, which is this one. That's going to be a JSON number. All right, I think I got this.
Yeah, it looks good.
Any mistakes?
We'll find out. Oh, yeah,
we
there
do.
is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got this one. All right.
I thought I was just going to tell you that your semicolons are on the wrong side.
No such luck. All right. So next up, I'll very quickly build the JSON object that we are actually going to send to. I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to leave them there.
It's fine. Whatever you're comfortable with. We'll accept you as you are. No judgment in front of you, anyway.
You guys have started a big controversy.
I know. Wim has. Just to be clear, Wim has started it, not me.
All right.
Don't at me.
So the first element that I'm adding is the thing that Connect requires of us, right? We need to send it an action script combo so that it knows that that whatever it's receiving comes from our FileMaker side. And then the next thing is the payload that we have just created in that other thing, the other variable. And that's a JSON object. All right, should be good.
Looks good.
All right, so we have the URL. We know what it is that we're sending. We actually have to send it. Right, that's the insert from URL. And we're going to store that in a variable. We know what the URL is. And we know what our curl options are. And because I like to clean up after myself, there we go. So that's what it takes from inside FileMaker to send things over to Connect. So the way that you test that is you actually run it. Let's see what happens. I should have toggled that one off, which I can do now. There we go. So there we go. Back to Connect. So this was, I guess, somewhat tedious setup because we needed to prepare the object that we can send to Connect. But from this point forward, it should go fairly quickly. Let's have a look. All right, so we've saved the trigger. That's what is going to start our Connect flow. Next thing that we'll do is actually we're not going to do an action. The first thing that we'll do is we're going to detect whether or not we need to send an email. So we can add an if, and we can pick from anything that we just send to Connect and say, is my send email, and we'll do text includes case insensitive, if that is a yes. All right, let's rename this one for readability. So if the value that we've sent in that send email bit of JSON, if that contains yes, we do need to send an email. So the action is going to be, and we'll pick from our Outlook connector, send an email. That's our hooked up app there. And that's it. So the email subject is going to be, thank you for your feedback. And because we want to send pretty emails, we're going to pick HTML. And of course, when we send HTML, we have to make sure that we include an HTML body. We have an email template this is Visual Studio Code. Here on the left-hand side is the HTML. On the right-hand side is what the email will look like when we send that. And then there's little space here that we will replace with the actual comment that the user has given us. So for now, I can just copy that whole HTML bit, plop it into here, and go find where I have my comments.
There it is.
Right there. So this I can replace with what came in from FileMaker as the comment. We're not going to CC anybody. The email recipient is going to be what we sent from FileMaker. So that's the email address. And that's it. All right. That's really as quickly as how you can set up an email integration from inside FileMaker that sends HTML email, which is one of the things that everybody likes to do. All right. So that's the first thing taken care of. If the user has checked that checkbox, they will get an email. So next up, we want to make sure that we can detect whether or not it was English that was left as the comment. So let's tackle that.
I'm sure there are people saying, well, I can send HTML mail with FileMaker, and you certainly can. Even without a plugin, you can send it with insert from URL, but it's actually pretty challenging to do. And so having something like Connect and Outlook to do this just makes what should be a really trivial task trivial.
Exactly. And like you mentioned in the beginning, this isn't the only way that you can do that, but it's by far one of the easiest ways that you can do this. So to make sure that we can translate between languages, we're going to use Google's Translate, which is one of the available connectors. And one of the options we have there is detect a language. So we'll hook it up to our Google account. And the text, of course, is going to be what we received from FileMaker as the comments. There you go. Now we'll need another if, because we need to figure out whether the thing that we got from Google Translate, and as you can see, Google Translate will give us a little bit of information. One of them is the language. So if the language text case insensitive, actually let's do an excludes case insensitive. So if it's not English, and the way that Google Translate, it uses two character abbreviations for language. So EN is English. So if it is not English, let's rename this one. There we go. Then we need to take one further action, that is to ask Google Translate to translate the text. And the source text is still going to be whatever we received from FileMaker. The target language is we're going to translate into English. The source language is what came in from Google Translate. There we go. And text format is going to keep it in simple text.
So if you were going to do this, using something like insert from URL to call each of these APIs, you can call the Outlook API, you can call the Google Translate API, you can call all of those things. But learning to work with an API, even if you've worked with lots of APIs, every one is a little different. So you have to go and figure out how does this API want me to send data? How does this API want me to authenticate? How does this API, maybe it needs to me to persist a token?
Absolutely.
All of those steps are just removed, so that you just deal with the stuff that's actually different here, which is the workflow that you are designing.
Exactly. And if you look at the clock, we're about 30 minutes in, and we've already worked with a form builder.
Yep.
We worked with the Outlook API, and we worked with the Google Translate API.
Yep.
There's no way you can do this just by reading the APIs, putting the calls together, and doing all of that.
No, you would need to be an expert in each of those things, or at least you have to be knowledgeable about each of those APIs that you're working with, be able to do this. And it wouldn't take you 30 minutes. It would take you much, much longer.
A few hours, even if you're proficient.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
So at this point, we've sent an email back to the user if they wanted one. We've translated the text if it wasn't in English. So it's time to update the record on the FileMaker side. So we pick the edit records hookup back to our FileMaker server that we have, and we'll pick the edit record here. There we go. That's the one that we're using today. And because we're using the data API, we have to go through a layout.
That's right.
That's how context is done. So I have a data API layout in my file. Record ID, I mentioned this. This is the record ID of the FileMaker record, and you need to know this one.
Right.
That's how FileMaker data API works. You need to know what record that you're touching, and that's why we send it along.
That's right.
There we go. And Connect has automatically updated our UI here to show the fields that are on that feedback data API layout, right? So we don't really care about this first field, but the language is what we received from Google Translate, and the translated comments is what came back from translated text. There you go.
Nice.
All right. So the final bit is that if the comment was about cost, we need to send out a text message. All right. So we'll start with an if, and we'll say if the subjects, we have a subject in there. Yes, we
There it
do.
is.
It's Scared me there for a little.
Where'd it go?
If that one is about cost, and we'll rename that, otherwise we'll forget.
If cost. Yeah.
All right. So actually, I didn't do that. We'll hook that up in a sec on the FileMaker side. Remember, way back in the beginning of the demo, I showed that we have these staff records, and we have a checkbox there to say if it's about cost, include this phone number.
Right. We didn't do the array of
We
numbers.
didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I'll hook that up in a sec. But because it's an array, and we have multiple people who want to get these text messages, we have Bob and Martha. This next section needs to be a repeat, right? It needs to iterate over the array of phones. So, and we have that. It's called repeat. And we now need to pick the list of phone numbers that we have, right? So, although there's nothing in there because we didn't send anything, because of the object that we made it inside the JSON, Connect is smart enough to know that an array is something that you can iterate over. So that's it. So for each one of these, we'll hook it up to Twilio, and we'll send a message, and we'll say that's my Twilio account right there. And this is just going to be cost alerts. And the recipient phone number we can now get from this iteration thing, right? So the item here is going to be the phone number. Oh, no, didn't want to do that. Go away. There we go. And the origin phone number is just the one from my Twilio account. And that's it. We're done.
That's it.
Right. That's how long
how
it
many
takes to,
how many APIs we got in that one flow?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Well, 5 if you count talking back to FileMaker's data API.
Yeah, data API.
All right. We'll enable this one and go back to FileMaker. And I have a script that collects that
phone numbers.
Phones. Yeah. So it's a simple execute SQL. Made my execute SQL name save.
Oh, good. That's a hint to everybody out there. Make your SQL statements name safe, field name safe. Use get field name to generate the field, the name of the fields and tables on the fly, or you will hate your future. Your future self will hate you if you don't do that.
Big time.
Yeah.
Execute SQL gives you back, if there's multiple records found, it's a return the limit list by
Perfect.
default.
Yeah.
Right. So I need to convert that into an array.
Yep.
So if I pass a parameter into my script to call it array, it's going to do some funky substitution. Nothing really fancy here. It's going to replace the return with a comma and tag on the square brackets at the beginning and the end.
Yep.
So nothing too fancy.
Yeah, it's going to wrap each of them in quotes.
Yes.
And put a comma and put the brackets on each end, and you're good to go.
Yes, indeed. So we'll put that in here somewhere. At the beginning, we'll do form scripts. And we'll pick our phones. And we'll tell it that it needs to produce an array. There we go. And we'll call this one set variable capture the results. Phones is get script results. And that should do it.
I think so. Yep.
All right. So if we go back to our script, the original script that we wrote to process, to iterate over all the studio records, if we detect that we don't have one, we create that record over on the FileMaker side in the feedback table. This is where we can now call our script to say, send it off to Connect. And that should do it in essence. Let's see if this actually works. And we got some errors.
Translate text, invalid value.
Let's go back and check that one out. Actually, let's see if we can. We won't spend too much time on here because, as you can see, we rehearsed this extensively, and it does work. I made a boo-boo somewhere, probably in the payload. Go ahead.
I was going to 2 records in this table. Will be on the detect the right. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Is that the studio? That's the studio table, right?
That's the studio table.
So where's the
somewhere.
data?
Yeah.
The data's not there.
Yep.
Maybe do the submit again real quick. Or refresh.
Let's do that. No, we're not getting it through.
Try signing in again. Go up to the file and switch account. Maybe your token is expired or something. Something we're working on. Might be why it's not getting the data.
This is why we got Robert here, for this very reason.
Well, let's see if this actually helps.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that. I wasn't sure before the studio table. I thought that might have been the other empty table, but no, it's the studio table should have data in it. And
try doing the refresh again,
or just refresh window.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nope. Go to the first record. Isn't that the one that you had imported?
Yeah, I don't see in either record. There's no data in the studio table. I think that's the core issue we're having here. So we've got something that's preventing the studio form. The data was in the form, right? We saw it in the studio.
If we go back to here, we see that the data is there.
Yeah. So that data didn't make it into FileMaker. Not sure why in this particular issue. Maybe just add another row right there and see if you can trigger it again. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Sure. There we go.
We have a few minutes. We can poke around. And I think, this is how real life is. We're in, this is what happens in real life. Things do not always work. Did we pick the right table, or was it one of your?
No, we did.
Okay.
Yep. We did.
So one test you could also do just to make sure Claris Pro is connecting to the right thing. If you just create a new blank file, it'll create a new file that has all of your tables. So you'd be able to see if the data is actually coming in or something else going on.
I'll call this one Robert in your honor.
Yeah, so something's happening where you're not getting a connection. If you had a managed database, I'm assuming that the connection to Studio is not working. Yeah, so it's something about the way it's signed in. We could do the tried and true, turn it off and turn it back on again. Maybe quit Pro,
FileMaker,
and then do the switch again.
Sign in. Yeah.
I've done the semicolons as well.
Yeah, it's the semicolons. That's what it is.
I'm sure it is.
We're getting something spinning here. Let's hopefully get lucky. Let's find that. Yes,
there we go.
Data. Okay.
Hooray. I'm pulling my weight a little bit here then.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. Save the day.
All right. Let's go and run this again.
Somebody else submitted something.
I'm sure that was Robert.
I
guess anybody with access to Studio.
Anybody who got that URL.
Exactly.
Screenshotted it as it went by.
There you go. Let's go to our.
And so that was why we got the error, because there was no data in the payload that landed there, which makes sense, right? If there's no data, it's not going to do anything.
No, we're still getting something. Anyway, we'll move past this one, I'm sure. I'm happy to reprise this in a breakout session with anybody that we have going on there. If we go to feedback, we should have our records.
The records got created, but connect.
Yeah, didn't send it over.
How much time do we have left? Is it worth looking a little bit? I would say let's run that script and see if the payload's getting created correctly. Just, I don't know, people might want to know, might be interested in how we would tackle solving this problem, because we're assuming it's something to do with the fact that this is a developer preview, but it may be something mundane, is that we just didn't populate the variables correctly. So we should maybe take a look at if that stuff is getting set correctly. There's always the debugging thing. You know, you have to really challenge your assumptions all the time. It's like you think you know what's wrong and you may not have any idea. So going back to the basics and just walking through the script, seeing if the variables are populated the way that you expect them to be. Of course, now it's it says empty.
Yep, I deleted the two records that we had,
okay,
because otherwise it'll skip over everything that we're doing anyway.
Right, good. So then let's see what let's look at the URLs that get built. I mean the JSON that gets built here.
Yep.
See if we're getting just some.
So at this point, we have our phones. We actually don't
Not
have
yet.
phones.
You got one more step to get to the phones.
Go.
There we go. There's your phones.
That's my array.
Yeah.
The payload is right here.
So far, that looks fine.
Yep. Agreed. We have our JSON, which has action script payloads. That looks fine too.
The yes return is fine, right? For the option that was selected. That's not the error we're getting, I don't think. But
yep. You saw something in here?
Well, the yes with the return. We're pattern counting. It's just a return, so that's just going to show up as an empty. I don't think your flow would notice that anyway. So
yep. The curl options are fine.
Yeah.
We're sending it off, and we're getting an OK return from Connect, meaning Connect has received this fine.
Yeah,
yep.
It doesn't hang around and tell you if it processed correctly.
No, let's go and check.
I just got a text message.
There you go.
Winner, winner. Oh, no, sorry, it's Uber Eats. No, I'm just kidding. It is officially your alert.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent.
So now we have
now we have successes. So there we go. So I don't know what that was. Maybe we didn't save a script. That's happened to me a billion times. Command S. It's like I have a tick. Command S. Command S. Command S. Command. I do it in VS Code too. Even though my VS Code is set up to autosave every 3 seconds,
yep.
I'm still just like I have a tick in my left hand. Command S. Command S. Command S.
So if we go look in our feedback table, that's the FileMaker, the native FileMaker table, not the Studio table. We see that we have our original Dutch text here, and then the translated text.
And I want to pay something for this conference. Woohoo! All right.
Let's see what Robert made of it.
Retirement fund. There we go. Just started our retirement fund.
Absolutely. All right. So
that's great.
Troubleshooting and all, we're about 45 minutes into this thing. So I would call that pretty good.
And you don't get to live without trouble. So that's just the way it is.
Yep. We have enough time to do the pivot?
What are we doing a pivot? Oh, the pivot table.
The pivot table. Yeah. Can you do it in 8 minutes?
I think I can.
Let's give it a try.
All right. I'm going to import a little more data so that we have something meaningful to look at when we come to look at that. There's my data.
So just to maybe lay some color as Wim's doing this. So we've got an external form that people can enter data into. We're using several APIs to process that data. And now we're going to do some visualization on that data using another kind of integration technique that we have inside of FileMaker which is these JavaScript widgets or add-ons that you can put into your file to build different kinds of controls that you don't get natively out of FileMaker. So it's just another sort of extension out into what we can do within our FileMaker platform by reaching for things like a pivot table, which is what we're going to do here.
Exactly, and the whole purpose is to make sure that we want to ask questions of our data. Like, we don't want to build a static report at this point. We don't know what the data will look like. So we want to be able to slice and dice our data a little bit, and we can. That's sort of like what we're trying to establish. So the way that this works is we're create a new layout, and we'll call this feedback pivot. Oh, I need to learn how to type. And we'll make that just a simple blank layout. I don't need a header. I don't have any add-ons in this file, so I'll just pick from the ones that I have available to me. And in this case, I'll use the Graph one. Graph is basically an add-on that bundles a fairly sizable number of these integrations into one. this may take a minute. The pivot one is actually the one that came from you originally. You'll see in
Really?
a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Groovy.
It's one of my favorite ones. I love pivot tables.
It's like when I'm Googling for a question, I'm trying to find an answer to something, and I find a forum post that's 10 years old of me asking the same question. That's what I'm getting here, a little deja vu.
Or even worse, if you answered it for somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You find your own answers.
Yeah, find my own answers. It's like, oh, well, I guess that's good. I guess that's the way it's supposed to work. Still, it always leaves me feeling, well, not quite well.
I like this pivot table add-on a lot too.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that gets imported here. That's why these can be slow. It's bringing in all of the code and all of the things it needs to present this. But I think, one of the ways I look at these add-ons is they're an escape hatch, right? Like a good platform needs a way to get out of it when you need to, because there's no platform in the world that will reach every use case that you have. It's not possible. You can't be everything for all seasons. So these escape hatches are really important. Like, what do you do when you need something different on a layout? Well, if you do, you can reach for something like JavaScript and HTML to build the different kinds of UIs that you might actually need for your solution.
All right. Like I said, this one has many, but the ones that we want is pivot. What's with my typing today?
Haven't had enough coffee yet.
I'm sure.
Clearly.
Yeah, what cup are you on now?
Can't answer.
No,
are we saving that for later?
Maybe we should, yeah.
Okay. I thought we might have a quiz on the amount of coffee consumed over the weekend, over the couple days.
Yep. So the way that you typically do this, if you haven't used that particular bundle before, like the pivot one, you'd basically go to this in a little more detail. This one is always interesting because it shows you exactly how the data should be presented back to the pivot one. I'm going to skip that one because I know what the data should look like. I've done enough pivots. But step number 3 is the parameter that needs to be fed, and you can read the whole text there. There's a script that comes that gets installed by the pivot table bundle. It's called the render, and that's the one script that you need to call. You have to give it the parameter of all the data that it needs to show in the pivot table. And the parameter that you need to pass to that script is what you get from copying this one over. So I'll leave this one in here. We'll come back to it, and we'll create a new script. And call this one show pivot. And perform scripts. And it's the render scripts from Carafe. And that is the parameter that we need to give it. So that's the thing that I copied when I was on the
nice.
On
well
the
done
there.
Oh, look at that. Geist Interactive.
I told you.
Wow. I don't know who those people are.
Not going to go there. There's 2 variables embedded in this parameter here: border size and data. Data is the single most important one, so we'll tackle that one. So leave that one in here. Set variable border size. Call that 1. That's just to make it look nice. Set variable data. All right. We need to be on Studio. Actually, no, we need to be on feedback for this, because that's where the data will come from. The way that the pivot thing works is the data that you need to present is an array. It's array is JSON, but it's not the curly brackets kind of JSON. It's the square brackets kind of JSON. So it's an array, and it's actually an array of arrays. And the first element in the array is the name of the columns, the data columns, and then basically every other element in the array is the same in the same order, but the values of the data that you're sending.
Yeah, and you'll see this kind of format used when they want to be very efficient, because arrays of arrays are actually more efficiently processed than say arrays of objects.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we'll call this one columns, and we'll come back to this one because this is JSON array. Square brackets. Actually, I didn't use square. Well, let's go back and make this nice and official. There we go. I could nest all of these things, but I like to keep them somewhat separate. As I then debug my scripts, I have some visibility into every individual element. I may combine them later, but let's do JSON set element again.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like to be able to read the script without having to like dive into a calc box so I can avoid it.
Exactly. All right. So there's a couple of things that we need to send column-wise. So the first element is element 0. Arrays are indexed or 0-based. The feedback content will do subject. That's fine. That's JSON string. So I can copy this over. The second element is going to be the language. Actually, no, didn't want to do this one. That's a string 2. And the third element is going to be sentiment. Because one of the things that we've done in the meantime with our data is for every bit of feedback, we basically marked it, was it good, bad, or neutral? So we have a sentiment in there. So three columns, subject, language, and sentiment that we're going to send. So that takes care of the columns. That's what we have in there. Now we need to, in this case, we have a found set of feedback records, so we can iterate over that, and we can for each one individually pick them up. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be static. I'll stay on one record, and I'm using the list of functions to collect data from my found set.
Another great technique, because that is a super fast way of doing data gathering.
Not a big fan.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of summary fields in general, but the list of I'm really liking those.
Yeah, it's a bummer that it's schema, but it is the fastest way to get found sets of data into something.
Let's go back and do my list offs right there. So subjects. And second one was languages. And the third one was sentiments.
We are pretty close to time here.
We are.
I don't know if there's any shortcuts we can take or not, but
I guess we can continue in a breakout session if it's if it takes time.
There are other sessions starting, and I want people to be able to go to see those, but we're pretty close. I mean, we're within probably 10 minutes or so of getting this done. And so maybe Wim could start a breakout to finish this up. Does that sound like a reasonable plan?
That works for me. Yeah.
Yeah, or we could show it at the end of the day too.
Oh yeah.
Or do a breakout during one of the other breaks in the schedule. So we don't interrupt other things.
Yep. So yeah, I just I think we've covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover in terms of, we just didn't quite get over the finish line on the pivot table, but I hope the point was clear, is that we're, by having the single platform, we are going to be able to reach more things with less tools, with less expertise and other technologies. You're going to need to know things around HTTP and JavaScript, but or HTTP anyway, insert from URL. A few of those things you're going to have to learn, but you really can get quite far with a unified platform like this. And Robert's going to show us later a little bit more about what is coming next. Right, Robert?
I am. Can't wait for it. It's going to be tough following you guys, though.
So we're going to have some fun later on in the day when we go through some of that stuff. So,
all right, this was great, guys. Thank you. Enjoy sessions, and we'll check in with everyone at the end of the day.
Yep, sounds great.
Polls. Thanks, everyone.
Polls, capsules. Have fun. Bye.